boats raiding and pillaging settlements on the Baltic coastline, French coastline, and the British Isles. However, a far less common association but equally appropriate for the raiding and pillaging Viking is the Viking slave trader. Slave trading was an integral part of the Viking economy, as one Arabic writer at the time noted. The Viking Rus had no cultivated fields and they lived by pillaging. Vikings would not only enslave the local population of the settlements they raided in France, Britain, and Ireland, but also demanded slaves as tribute from the Eastern Slavic communities in Russia and Finnish farming communities. So prolific was the enslavement of the Slavic people, English speakers derived the word slave from Slavic. Many of the enslaved were destined for rich, vibrant markets in the Islamic world, such as those in Baghdad. The Viking Rus would use extensive Russian waterways to transport not only their slaves, but other Baltic goods, furs of all kinds, and forest products. Contemporaries noted that the Vikings treated their slaves well and dressed them appropriately, but not out of any humanitarian concerns, rather to make sure that their merchandise wasn't damaged and presentable in order to extract maximum silver from their slaves. Female slaves were also expected to fornicate with their Viking slave masters. Muslim traders took the act of evaluating a slave very seriously. One Persian writer from the 11th century wrote, "Most people imagine that buying slaves is like any other form of trading. In fact, the buying of slaves is a branch of philosophy." The author continued by describing various techniques in evaluating slaves, warning that the yellowing of a slave's complexion can be a sign of hemorrhoids, and suggests a potential buyer to ask a slave to lie flat on the ground. Then the buyer would press on both sides and watch closely for any signs of inflammation or pain. Muslim slave traders also prized slave eunuchs and would castrate many of their Slavic slaves. One Arabic writer wrote, "If you took a Slavic twin and castrated one, he would certainly become more skillful and more lively in intelligence and conversation than his brother, who would remain ignorant, foolish, and exhibit the innate simple-mindedness of the Slavs." Castration for Slavic slaves was thought to purify and improve the Slavic mind. However, castration wasn't performed on African slaves, as castration was thought to negatively impact African slaves. It should be noted that during this period, it wasn't just Muslims and Vikings that were engaged in slave trading. Much of Europe was engaged in slave trading. The Venetians were especially adept at buying and selling of slaves. Traversing the Russian waterways was no easy task for the Viking slave traders, as ever-increasing commercial activities from the Russian waterways attracted the attention of nomadic steppe tribes, such as the Pechenegs. The Pechenegs would wait for the Viking flotilla at narrow river.
COVID didn't make our systems fail. It showed us the failure of our systems.
Second one is, does the president have any evidence to back up his suggestions that Joe Biden is a pedophile or taking drugs?
I'd have to refer you to the campaign. I'm not here to talk about Joe Biden. Yes.
And tonight, more developments in the nefarious dealings of the Biden Family Corrupt Business Bureau. In other words, the Biden Corrupt Syndicate, because there are new reports that Hunter Biden remains financially tied to that Chinese equity firm that invested in a technology company sanctioned in 2019 for committing human rights violations against Uyghur Muslims. And of course, now, we still have more questions than answers surrounding Zero Experience Hunter and his shady art dealings, like what exactly is the marketplace for that crappy drawing that I see on TV right now? Why all the secrecy? Oh, people can bid anonymously. Okay, and get this, one of the guests at Hunter's recent art shows in L.A., that would be Mayor Eric Garcetti, who was recently
in this video, you can see then Vice President Joe Biden pinch the nipples of this 8-year-old girl, and she responds by lightly elbowing him so that he removes his hand.
You know, sort of like portraits of a crack addict. But she refused to give a straight answer. Take a look.
There was concern when President Biden took office about his son's business dealings with China. He was supposed to divest himself of his stake in a Chinese private equity firm in December with ties to the Chinese central bank. As of April, he had not yet done that, and at some point you are going to get back to us on that. Do you have an update on that? Has he dissolved that interest now?
I'd point you to his representatives on that. He doesn't work in the administration.